Jeremy?
Hello there.
How are you? Can you hear us okay?
I hear you great, yes.
Just to let you know, I'm in a cinema where most people are hiding under the seats.
Okay.
So I think you'd have
I wish I was there.
You can call that a success then.
Good, yes.
Good to talk to you again. Can I bring you right back? Because this is a film that you say has been gestating for you for decades. And it kind of starts in two different worlds that you're really interests me is music. You genuinely were in a punk rock, extreme punk rock band. Tell me about that.
Believe it or not. I mean, certainly you can't tell by looking at me now, but I spent my youth into in the punk and the hardcore scene near Washington, D.C. And I think it started by skateboarding. I was big into skateboarding in the 1980s, so it was certainly a bunch of thrash and metal and punk, and it was just a very, I think, effortless connection with the physicality and the expression of skateboarding. It was very individual, yet it was done with a group, and so was punk rock and hardcore. And I was actually quite a prodigy as a skateboarder in my youth, but then skating evolved and transitioned to a much more technical thing, and I became a dinosaur. I kind of sucked at skateboarding, so I kept the punk rock and focused on that and gave up skateboarding. But the kids that I hung out with making movies were the same kids that I formed bands with, so we were playing in basements and going to shows, and yeah, it was just a very natural thing for me to associate punk rock and filmmaking. And it wasn't until Green Room that I actually was able to finally, fuse those worlds together. But they definitely both defined my youth.
Those punk rock gigs, though, surely weren't anything like the gig we've just seen in this room.
Nah, there are hints of it. I mean, I was in the 1990s. There were Nazi skinheads at almost every show I attended in Washington, D.C. So there was an edge of danger. In the 1990s, also, Washington, D.C. happened to be the murder capital of the country per capita. And it was a dangerous place. It was a dangerous city. It was very dirty and seedy, and I really enjoyed going there. But I was, of course, from the suburbs, but that stuck with me. It got very violent. I mean, I've been assaulted many times in the pit. It's sort of consensual, but it gets very dangerous. And when it gets out of hand, it gets very scary. And there was the only actual danger I witnessed, or I was sort of in some bit of peril, was when there was a stabbing outside of the club I was in. And I was like 16 years old. So that was, I guess, it sort of resonated with me. It's like how close you are to danger and how much sort of potential energy is wrapped up in these shows.
The other world, of course, the film world, and you as a teenager were zombie movies. I can't help but wonder what kind of teenagers making zombie movies. Parents weren't worried?
Well, it's a different era. I mean, the things that we did growing up making movies, I mean, blood was running into the gutters in our suburban neighborhood, would now warrant a SWAT team response. We would definitely be incarcerated or put on lists or expelled. But back then in the 80s and early 90s, it was just good fun. And it's a certain amount of novelty to making, I guess, VHS home videos. Like, it wasn't a popular technology. People were very interested. So they like, soccer moms would stop in their minivans and ask, why there's like 3 kids laid out on the sidewalk with guts coming out of them and a zombie standing over them. And they would say, just making a movie. And they'd say, oh, cool, carry on, So it was good times, and it was a lot different. Like, we would run around with BB guns and firecrackers and blow up mailboxes. Yeah. So those days are over, but I certainly benefited from those.
Sweet innocent times.
Yeah.
So you sat down with this to write it about 2 years ago, isn't it? Where did the initial idea, the Green Room idea, come from?
It was just like sort of the most direct way to fuse punk rock and sort of genre cinema. It was like just starting. A lot of my films, I focus on environment. It's very important to me. It's sort of a visual exploration of certain environments, and starting with a music venue seemed like the most natural way to do this. I've been obsessed with the idea of staging a siege scenario in a green room for a long time, and never had the resources to do it. So it was also, it wasn't just to make a film about punk or hardcore or metal or whatever it was. It was to just use it as an environment and a texture. And I'm on record as saying like it's my way of doing a very cheap version of Mad Max, where you have mohawks and shaved heads and leather and studs and boots and braces and just all that sort of post-apocalyptic vibe going on, but for a much, I guess, more affordable price.
One of the things, the tension, is a part of that getting people on screen that you feel that you identify with. Is that part of the key? Do you kind of write your characters to be people that you can identify with?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I do is I want to see real people on screen, and that gives me so much material to work with. Because if you take a traditional cinematic space or a standard genre scenario, you just put like real, relatable people in those positions, the film almost writes itself. You just kind of, you can inhabit the roles of the characters. You can add, the amount of strife you think would be realistic, and not so much like the band itself wasn't full of conflict. And I see that all the time with bands portrayed in movies. There's always conflict, and maybe that does come more with $1 million record deals or huge, stadium touring. But the people in these low rent punk rock bands, they just, they want to be there. It's all volunteerism. No one would give a shit if your band broke up. Only you. So I use that for tension in that, like, if you see yourself on screen and you see a traditional sort of, I guess, cinematic landscape, it becomes very exciting because it's like your first time watching a movie like this with real people. And all of a sudden you lean in, your eyes are very wide, your ears are tuned in, because it seems like, what if you and your friends were locked in this room?
And the cast, particularly the band, are fantastic. Was it hard? Soon after Blue Ruin, you were finding it much easier to find people to be in your films. Did you find it hard to mix that chemistry, get the right mix for that?
No, it was actually among the easiest parts of the process. I had enough access and enough money to find the right people, but I didn't have so much money that everyone demanded a bona fide movie star in every single role. So I just cast on the merits of the actor's craft and their enthusiasm in the project. It's a big deal for me to find not only great actors, but people who actually want to be there with you and tell the story and make the sacrifice and devote their time and energy to the script and the production. So some of this, I sit down with like Imogen Poots and I talk with Anton via Skype, and then I just submitted, casting specs across the, agencies, and we found Joe Cole and Callum Turner in the UK off of tapes they submitted. And that was great because I just said, wow, these are the people. These are the people that had the right energy. And it's hard to find people like Joe Cole who actually have a physicality that seems menacing, yet don't look like they're just gym rats, like, beefcake American, overly tanned, crazy abs, that are trying to audition for big action flicks. Joe's a real person, but he's also actually tough, which on set was a bit of a deal for us. He kind of went a little too strong in some of those takes, and was slamming people against the side of that Mexican restaurant. That was pretty tough. But I used that take. David Thompson actually got hurt.
They also very believably become a band. They really did learn to play their instruments, didn't they, and play together?
Well, that was a leap of faith because while they had the craft and the vibe and the energy that I needed, they did not have the experience to be a band. I think Anton and Alia had previous experience playing guitar and bass. I think Anton was in a punk band actually, but Joe and Callum had never been near a band or an instrument, so it was tough getting them in Portland, Oregon, where we shot the film. Unfortunately, day one was the first performance of the entire band together, and they had not even sort of been in the same room prior to that. So we kind of got through that situation. It was supposed to be kind of a low rent show, kind of a disappointment. So it worked great. It seemed real. It seemed like they weren't quite in time. But physically they were perfect. And then we had shot all of our exteriors. They had time to really become a band and practice in a sort of soundstage, and write their own songs and just go through the process, which is a very important thing that Anton wanted to do, was to not just learn the songs that we had pre-recorded for them to perform on camera, but to go through the process as an ensemble to actually write new music, even though it wouldn't be used in the film, just so they can get there and reach an agreement and kind of, again, go through the process. And that helped them really bond as a team. The actors, the band, the Ain't Rights, when we wrapped, they would go out for beers over the weekend. They would hang out all weekend. They became really close friends. And an actual band, by the time we wrapped the film, they played the wrap party as the Ain't Rights. It's pretty cool.
So, you get them to form these fantastic bands, and then you bonds together, and then you kill them. It's just the way it is. Patrick Stewart, how did he get involved, and what was that like for you to have him in the film?
That was amazing. It was a last minute save, to be quite honest. We were trying to find the right person that would fit my needs as a director. Again, I really do respect all actors, whether they're superstars or not, but I don't care about their fame or their sort of franchise association when they come on my set. I want them to kind of be part of an ensemble and add to the role. Of course, the financiers wanted a superstar, and Patrick kind of sort of fit both our needs. And when his name came up, it was like, I think about 2 weeks from production, and we were really trying to find the right guy for the role. So he had just joined my management company, and so there was a nice little inside connection there. He got his hands on the script, watched my previous film, Blue Ruin, and just took a chance. I mean, I was on the phone with him within a day or two, which is very hard. I mean, quick read. To give an actor like that a script and get a response within like 3 days is unheard of. But we got on the phone, and then I think 3 days later, he was on a plane to Portland. It was pretty intense. But he signed on 10 days before we shot. So he was, again, he's not a superhero in the movie, but he served as a superhero for me behind the scenes, because if he didn't come on board, I don't know if our film would have actually gotten made.
Wow, that's really hard to believe. God, he's magnificent in it. Magnificent as in everything.
And he's very generous too. I mean, I was expecting more of like an impact when he hit our set. He's just a very kind, generous actor, and was part of the ensemble, and it was great and a relief.
The music is huge in this, and that means a great deal to you, doesn't it? Because the Dead Kennedys play a huge part in your life. This whole
they're the first hardcore punk band I ever heard in my life, and it was crazy that 30 years later that I would get to feature them in a movie or a cover of their song. But it was the only song, the Dead Kennedys, Nazi Punks Fuck Off. That was the only song I wrote into the script, which is something I'm trained not to do as an independent filmmaker. It's something that you never get. And we got it. We wrote a letter to the Dead Kennedys and gave them the script and got approval. And I was pretty shocked. It was easy.
And it was years back that you recorded that song onto a C90 cassette. You broken the tabs off, and you replaced the tabs. This was a pivotal moment in your life.
It was. I was on a cross country trip with my parents. I never stepped foot on an airplane until I was 18 years old. So we just traveled everywhere in a car all together. And we stopped in Colorado halfway across America. And it's just the son of my parents' friend. I don't even know his name. I knew him for one day, but he introduced punk rock to me, and he had this Dead Kennedys record, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. And I had on me, as a child of the 80s, my Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack on cassette. And I heard Dead Kennedys. I had this one take, and I knew I had to take it home with me. So as long as I could preserve the main theme, Axel F, on that sound, I put the the cellophane tape over the Right Protect tabs, and I dubbed over my soundtrack. And I took home the Dead Kennedys, and I didn't know if I quite liked it. I knew that this kid, whoever he was cooler than I was, and I was a skateboarder, and I should like this. So I took it home with me. And I think about 3 cycles in to the tape, I trained myself to like it because I knew it was cool. And then I loved it.
Such a great story. Now, I know you can't see us, but we have a room of people here who've just watched the movie. I know some of them want to ask some questions. So,
sure.
Gail is going to, if you put your hand up, is there anyone who'd like to nearby the mic so that Gail doesn't have to? No, right at the very back. That's fine. She'll be with you in a minute.
No worries.
While she's heading up there, I want you to think of your Desert Island Band.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, I've been asked that 1,000 times. I know it.
And
it's Black Sabbath. Today. It might change, day by day.
Okay, at this moment, that's Black Sabbath. That's good. Yeah,
they've got a very good discography.
Question coming to you from the back.
Hi, I don't mean to draw attention away from Green Room. I'm still kind of processing what I've just seen. But Blue Ruin, I thought, was just a tremendous feat of filmmaking with budgetary restraints, and it's a film where you can really see the work put into it on the screen. It really pays off. I was wondering, without bringing up any Vietnam flashbacks, were there any particularly frustrating problems that you had to overcome, on the cheap while making Blue Ruin?
It's funny. During the making of Blue Ruin, it was very intense for me. It was emotional, and I was just terrified because I put my entire net worth, or my family's entire net worth, on the line for that movie, and I had my shit together all the way up through production. I knew what I wanted to do. I wrote it to fit the budget, to really utilize available resources, and to take place mostly on home turf with locations from friends and family. So I was very familiar with all of the environments we'd be exploring. I owned the camera. I shot it myself. But in production, I just kind of lost my mind at how stupid a move it was to risk all that money. Looking back, despite the stress of the financial risk, I didn't realize how amazing it was as far as the level of control. And there was no more true investor in the film than I, because I fed the story whatever it needed. Because the biggest risk was to come back with a half-assed movie, with a film that wasn't the best work I could do. So I really enjoyed it in retrospect. As far as the collaboration with myself was effortless. I funded it in a responsible way, as far as if it went over a shoot day, it's okay. Just make it good, Jeremy, make it good. And that's something you don't encounter in the industry. People will stop at the Excel sheet. Oh, you're over budget here and here, you're cut off. And so if there's little sort of variations in the budget, or things go a little wrong, you got to find someone else to play a role, or you can't find what you need in local casting, you got to ship somebody in from New York or LA. These things that I would just say, of course, we had to have the best quality possible. Again, it's an anomaly. But Blue Ruin was, like you said, it's all the money went on screen, and it was invested in the quality of the film, and that was all that mattered to me. So if you talked to me right after I shot it, before we got an awesome premiere, I would still be just terrified of what the hell I did. I didn't know it was a movie. I didn't know it was a film until it premiered at Cannes. We were such a rush to finish it. I'd never seen the finished picture and sound together until I saw it with 800 people at Directors Fortnight. So now that that's over, it's about how do I bring that mentality to the actual industry, where it's a sustainable filmmaking community. And I haven't figured out how to do that yet. It's tough.
Any more questions? There's a question over. Gail, where have you gone?
Yes.
You have your question already? Oh, great. Here it is.
I haven't watched Blue Room, but I gather from the last person that asked the question that you are orientated in its production, that it was more environmentally themed, that you have an interest in environment. So this transition now reminds me of famous trio of films that were made, The Colours Red set. Are you following a passion? I can see the passion in you now on screen. I know you can't see us here, but I can see a passion in your commitment to independent production, which I think is fantastic. The passion of the film and the actors, and of course Patrick Stewart as well, and those nice young English actors that came into it. You created an environment in a very heavily involved film. There's a great passion and action in the film. Don't sort of unwanted violence, for want of a word. It's sort of themed, and it certainly had me captivated with the follow through of the film. I know my brother that was here with me was less thoughtful about it. He actually just went outside, but in following your team through the film, I thought, yes, there's an interesting concept developed in the film, and the way you rounded it off at the end, and the odd shot of the dog still in the background, and where it ended with dog back to owner. I thought that there's a nice little passion in there. What's your next project? I would love to be a chance to see it, and I would also still like to see Blue Room. Is it somewhere that one can get it?
Oh, Blue Ruin? Blue Ruin is, I don't know where it is in the UK. It's certainly, you can have access to it, I guess, if you might have to pay some money. I don't know. I know it's on DVD and Blu-ray. Not sure about streaming. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, I am getting intermittent cutouts with the audio, I must say. But the next project, I have a bunch of opportunities out there. I don't know quite how to navigate this industry yet. I think I'm going to just not be too precious about things unless I write it. I'm looking forward to jumping on bigger projects, just to practice the craft directing, you know, and I have something I want to write down the line. It's a little less violent, so your brother might enjoy it. But the other thing is like, I mean, there's studio films that I'm sort of talking about and TV shows, and it's all just a flurry of potential amazing things to do. But I don't quite trust the world yet as far as how I came up, you know, from my short films to my first film, Murder Party, to Blue Ruin and Green Room. I just have to sit by myself in a room with a blank page and start and then never stop until it has a premiere. And that, you know, when you're chasing other projects and scripts you don't own or to adapt novels, like I'm just kind of pawing at things and seeing what's real, and it's not real until you're on set. So I think it's about maintaining a certain course that I can control, that has, you know, my original scripts that I can protect and be precious about, and also just trying to broaden my skill set and go on adventures and do big stupid ass studio films, whatever I have to do to make a living. Just try and enjoy it, because it's been a hard slog to break in on my own terms, my own money. And I want to just kind of take a breath and enjoy the sort of plateau that I'm at right now. But you were cutting off a bit in my earphones as far as the violence, but you're welcome and I'm sorry. I don't know.
we only have time for one more, Jeremy. Okay. So,
hi, yeah, Jeremy. It's rare that, you know, you'd watch a movie and kind of at the end of it you're extremely jealous of a near perfect script. You know, I just think your balance on it was, you know, the violence was extreme, but I thought your balance throughout, and like that, the touch of the dog at the end, it's really neat, and even the line and that. I'd be very interested to know your process of script writing. Do you sit at home? Do you go to places? Do you storyboard? Do you get people into act scenes or get advice on technical details or the character? What do you do, and how do you work through maybe you do a number of rewrites. How did you get on with that script?
Yeah, I mean, for Green Room, I had the benefit of having the idea. I was gestating for almost a decade. Like I wanted to explore a green room situation. I even made a short film. It was a comedy, actually, in 2006 or 7. I did it in my own basement of my house and sort of plastered it with rock and roll posters and just had this kind of death metal band in the green room, and they're messing around with a record player and they play it backwards. It's a metal record, so they summon a demon, and just goofy stuff. But the idea, like bands in a room during a live concert, was like this thing that I had for almost a decade. So when I finally had access to resources and opportunities to make actual films funded by other people, it was after Blue Ruin. It was after a big premiere, and I figured, like, this is good timing to let me get this off my chest. I had to kind of expel this demon of a film from within, so the premise was there for a long time. The plot and the characters, like, it was brand new. So I had an old idea with a fresh perspective. So I sat down and just started cranking it out after I did a little bit of research with my friends. Having the experience in the punk rock and hardcore scene was a huge help. Again, I couldn't build that environment with my own resources, but I knew it intimately. I knew the world. I knew the setting, the textures, the different sort of subgroups within the hardcore punk scene, and so I designed this space, in my head. So I became very familiar with it, and once I set the stage in the first 16 pages, it was just basically pulling stories from my youth. I've actually played that Mexican restaurant show with my band. That's a real sort of Plan B scenario, and it was beautiful and embarrassing at the same time. Like, beautiful for us, like going all out, singing my lungs out. My band was playing like their heart out. But I think from outside looking in, it was just pathetic, But my friends just had fallen asleep at the wheel while on a tour. So I really used real life experience as a foundation. And once I set the siege scenario, it was just making sure I maintained a certain continuity of sort of realism, but of course it was all fictional from there. And I just inhabited the characters that I knew. There's a real Tad, there's a real Tiger, there's a real Sam in my life, and so I use that to explore not only this scenario but the environment. In that, once I close my eyes and think of, like, well, what are my resources here? I used containing the situation as I think a creative boon, like where I was, okay, I'm not going to go outside these walls for a long time. So what do we have in there? So I have, a bar, a kitchen, amplifiers, speakers, microphones. Oh, like, hey, it'd be cool to design a whole action sequence based on amplified feedback when the dogs come in. So it's kind of like, it was fun to just write intuitively without trying to adhere so much to structure or checking boxes for like a horror slasher scenario. It was more like I treated it like it was a tactical scenario, and it was a war film. And with a war film, I sort of staged a battle, and I would go outside and try and inhabit the role of the skinheads and think like they would think, and then vice versa for the band trapped in the room. But I did a lot of research prior to that, so I knew, again, the hardcore punk world, but I did not know the intimacies of the Nazi skinhead culture, other than just sort of brushing up against them in the 1990s. So documentaries and just they're very active online. The amount of research I did for this film, it's a lot, and it took a toll on me. Like when you're researching Nazis and pit bulls and dog maulings, it gets to be too much. And I think that a big part of this film was I'm a little too soft for this movie. Like the violence in it gets me too. I wanted to treat it all the same. Like I wanted it to be grounded and believable and emotional, and that applied to performance, set design, and violence. And so I think when you see a film like Green Room with a body count that's relatively low by all standards in Hollywood, the violence is very hard to digest. That's, I think, a testament to the actors' performances and the realism that the crew helped me achieve. But then I had fun. Sometimes I would tweak things and really get into the logic and and try and be more calculated. But other times I would say this scene is about real people in a certain scenario. So I'm going to do one draft. I'm going to do a single pass and really kind of do method writing where the finale, it's a little awkward. The timing's off. Clark blurts something out and turns around and he gets shot sort of abruptly without any sort of fanfare or slow motion or anything cool. What I did was I got scared. I became the kids. I was trying to sort of resolve the situation, but I was in over my head. And I walked down that driveway and I saw what I saw, and I was impulsive and intuitive and kind of dumb. And I miscommunicated with my partner. Like Amber was there for one reason, Pat was for another. And so I let it ride and I stopped. And I spell checked it, but other than that, it's a first draft pass. And it's very rare to not be forced to do a perfect sort of, tie the whole thing up in a bow and deliver it to the studio. So it was very intuitive, and I think it's an anomaly. It's a film that would never get made if I didn't have the momentum from Blue Ruin going into this film.
Jeremy, we sort of thank you very much for your time tonight. I think we've kept you a bit longer than we were supposed to, but thank you very much.
No problem.
We've loved the film, and I'm sure people who were about to form bands probably won't form bands after it.
No, do. It's okay.
But certainly won't take any bookings. Jeremy Saulnier, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate you coming out. Thank you.